Welcome into the Bubba Rose Show, episode 13. We're back at it after about a 3-week hiatus. I planned on taking the week of Easter off, but it turned into a couple more weeks. Had some things lined up, and life happened for myself as well as the guest. But very excited to be back. And right now, welcome into the show, Matt Schumacher. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, man. Glad to be with you. It's been a long time coming. Us two hopping on a podcast together, so I'm glad we could do it.
Absolutely. We, like you said, talked for quite some time. I'm very excited to have you on the show. We thought we had it lined up 2 weeks ago, but then your little girl entered the world. So first of all, tell everyone about that.
Well, yeah, man. I guess I got my first introduction into what it's like being a parent. We're kind of on our children's time now, not our own time anymore. But we're blessed, man. We have a healthy little baby girl named Bella, and she's about 9 days old now. So finally got her home a couple days after she was born, and it's a trip, man. It's a whirlwind. It's awesome. I know you've got two kids, so you can relate, but it's been a lot of fun so far.
Absolutely. Time will fly, as I'm sure a lot of folks have told you. So, cherish every moment. And just make the most of everything. That's for sure. I know early on in my child's lives, especially my son, I was working, I guess, 50 to 55 miles from home, spending 2 hours in the car every day. So I would give anything to have had a job closer to home where I didn't miss so much time.
Yeah, gosh, that's a long commute, man. Long
uh, but
commute.
but Matt, tell folks a little about yourself. I know you grew up in St. Louis. You're a Cardinals fan, but just talk about your love of sports and a little about yourself before you ventured to Butler University to be part of that track and field program.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I grew up in St. Louis, where I feel like every kid, at least for a brief period of time, plays softball or baseball, just because it's such a baseball crazy town, and the Cardinals have such a presence there. So I played baseball all growing up until I got to high school. Loved every sport. Was a diehard baseball, St. Louis Blues for hockey and Rams for football. Got to see some world championships, some NFL championships, which was awesome. As a little kid, you think that's everything when you're growing up. Then I got to high school and I continued playing sports, but I kind of started to realize, like, I feel like so many kids' dreams is to be a pro athlete. And mine certainly was to be a pro athlete. And probably like midway through high school, I started to realize, okay, I want to play a sport in college. And then probably after that, I'm going to have to think about, getting a job. So, I played football and basketball for a brief period in high school, but track ended up being something that I really, really loved and enjoyed, which took me to Butler, where I studied journalism and ran track, which was a great experience. Um, yeah, man. So pretty much from the jump, sports have been a part of my life, and I'm really fortunate.
Before we shift over and talk about your passion for broadcasting, because I know obviously at Butler you majored in electronic journalism and you had a minor in strategic communications, kind of the media relations side of things. Just talk about one, what position, just out of curiosity, did you play in football? Because I was a quarterback and punter myself.
Wow, that's a heck of a combination. I was a receiver and a safety, but I didn't play very much because I could not learn the plays. As stupid as that sounds, I was terrible at learning the plays. So I got in rarely where I needed help. Like I would, if a play got called from the sideline, I would be like, our quarterback's name was Mike. I would say, Mike, what do I do here? Just please tell me what route am I running so that I don't mess this up. So it ended up being a good thing that track came along, because you don't gotta learn plays or memorize anything, formations or anything like that. The gun goes off and you run as fast as you can.
Before you went to Butler, just out of curiosity, what other programs did you consider for track and field?
Yeah, I was looking at Tulsa, um, Furman, I really, really wanted to go to TCU, but I wasn't quite fast enough for them. And it's funny, Bubba, I looked at so many different schools way far away from home, from as far east to as far south to as far north as you could go from St. Louis. And I ended up at Butler, which was the closest school to home that I was looking at. So it's just funny how life works. I was an 18-year-old kid and couldn't wait to get out of mom and dad's house. But when push came to shove, I ended up staying as close to home as I could.
Now, exactly how far was it from St. Louis to Indy?
About 3.5 to 4 hours.
Okay.
So far enough that mom couldn't drop in on a
Right.
dime, but close enough that, they could come up for parents' weekend or homecoming or whatever.
Now, I talk about you majoring in electronic journalism there at Butler. Where did your passion for broadcasting come from? And obviously, the Cardinals through the years have had some very famous broadcasters. And so, did that have anything to do with it? Where did that love for broadcasting come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say first and foremost, I was obsessive about Sports Center when I was growing up. And that was before Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and shoot, even the internet was around, but I wasn't really using it, when I was in second and third and fourth grade, really. So Sports Center was how I got my fix. And I would wake up for the first Sports Center at 6 a.m. or whatever time it was in St. Louis, and I would regularly watch three in a row, even if it was a repeat, just because I just couldn't get enough of it. And I just so enjoyed watching Stuart Scott and Scott Van Pelt. And I had a football with all of Stuart Scott's, one-liners
Oh yeah,
on there. And I just thought he was
yeah.
booyah, baby. I thought he was the coolest dude ever. And from a young age, I wanted to do what he was doing. But to your point, though, about the Cardinals' rich history of broadcasters, Jack Buck, Joe's father, was
Absolutely.
the radio guy for the longest time. And I remember frequently in the summer, listening to Jack Buck, with my little boom box with my
Yeah.
headset plugged in, going to sleep, hiding it from my parents. So that probably was an influence too.
So, kind of going backwards a little bit, you talked about being a track athlete at Butler. I noticed you ran the 400 hurdles and then what also the 4x4 1600-meter relay. And so talk about that because that's certainly I ran track to prepare myself for football, and I was a sprint guy. And I remember we had a guy out injured or sick or something, and I had to run the 400 on a whim. And it's a hard race. I was fine for about 300 meters, but when I came into that final curve in that final 100 meters, man, I had knives in my hamstrings.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, it's everyone says the 400 hurdles is the hardest race, but I actually disagree. I think it's the 800. I had a similar situation senior year of high school. Our 4x8 was a really good team. They were all state all 4 years that I was in high school. But my senior year, one of the guys was hurt. So they were looking for a fourth leg before the state championship. So the coach asked me to do a time trial. And I was good through the first 400. But boy, that last 300, man, I have not experienced pain like that ever. So I gained a lot of respect for 800 runners after that. But yeah, 400 hurdles, you know, I loved it because there was just so many different things to work on, from developing, race tactics to being technically better, getting over the hurdle, to your fitness, to your endurance, to your speed. There's just so many different things to work on, and I really like that aspect of it. Being part of a 4x4 was really fun because it provided a team atmosphere and environment in a sport that's largely individual. Um, we actually just had our indoor school record 4x4 broken by the current team, which is so much better than we were. So it's fun kind of seeing the program and how much it's grown. But I would say, Bubba, to be honest with you, like I look back on my track career, and for a long time, it was a source of like disappointment for me because I was often injured, and I kind of developed a bad attitude because of those injuries, and never really came close to scratching the surface of my potential as an athlete. And as time has gone on, and the Lord has worked on me more, I've realized that it was a great learning experience more than anything else, because it taught me a lot about, you know, there's things in life we can't control, but one thing we can always control is, our attitude and our response. So to me, that was the best part about my student athlete experience, was just the lessons that I learned, from it years later.
You talk about your experience. Is there a certain meet maybe, or you had the opportunity to run against some folks that were pretty good, I'm sure. So just talk about that, and maybe somebody that went on to the Olympics, or maybe had the opportunity to qualify for the Olympics, or something of that nature.
Yeah. Um, so one meet we would always go to was the Mayo Invitational at Notre Dame, and I think it was my sophomore year. Karani James was there, and I don't know if anybody who's listening is going to remember Karani James, but he ended up with a silver or maybe a bronze medal in the 400 at the 2012, I think it was, Olympics or World Championships. He
Yeah.
was in the final, and he was competitive as heck, and he ran at Alabama. I was not in his race. I was not even close to good enough to compete against him, but he went off in one of the heats before me. And I just remember watching him run thinking, my gosh, that is what an Olympic athlete looks like. And I am not an Olympic athlete. So I better take school more seriously. But yeah, I would say, that meet is something that sticks in my head, because the 4x4 later on, a few years later at that meet, we broke the school record, which was fun. And my family was there. And it was just a real joyful moment for me, especially as a senior and somebody that had dealt with injury, just to have that um, success, and share that with teammates. But I got to host the not as an athlete, but as a broadcaster, I got to host the Bowerman Awards last year before COVID, and that was incredible, because a lot of the athletes that were finalists for that will be running this summer in Tokyo. So I'm excited for that.
Now, your first year at Butler, was it the 10-11 school year, or 11-12?
Yes, it was 10-11. So I got to see Butler make
Okay.
another run to the
Yeah.
NCAA final.
And unfortunately, I was really pulling for the Bulldogs, but the first year they had come up short against Duke when they nearly made the beyond half court shot to win it. And then the next year, it was UConn they came up short against. Is that right?
Yeah, Kemba Walker. That was the magical year that UConn won 6 games in 6 days, I think it was, at Madison Square Garden, and Kemba had the patented step back.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that was a heartbreaker. But, you know, looking back on it now, Kemba Walker was just a man on a mission that year, and he was, gone on to be a really good NBA player. But it's funny you bring up that half court shot, because I feel like that is in every pre NCAA tournament hype video. It was such a classic moment and memory and time. And man, what a difference. I mean, listen, that changed Butler's trajectory forever as a school,
Yeah.
as a basketball program, as an athletics department, the community as a whole. The fact that they made one championship, let alone two, it doesn't matter that they lost. I mean, it changed that school forever. But imagine if that shot had gone in.
Yeah, no doubt. I was certainly pulling for the Bulldogs each of those seasons, and who knows, maybe one day they'll get back there. A lot of memorable moments under Brad Stevens,
Mhm.
who was, of course, or moved on to the Boston Celtics after that. But just talk about, your introduction to Butler University being such a memorable season, and with your electronic journalism major. Did you have the opportunity to work with Coach Stevens any? Because he still remained there for 2 or 3 years after that before he moved on to the NBA.
Yeah, so you know, I never got a chance to work with Coach Stevens, but he did come to a couple of my classes, and he would occasionally drop by our track practices as well, just to get a run in or something before his practice. And he was always an incredibly kind, humble, and cordial guy. And I think he never got, I think all of us, it would be real easy to kind of get caught up in all the success we're having in the limelight and what have you, but he never did. And I'd be surprised if he did at this point. I haven't seen him in years now that he's moved on to the NBA. But one thing I always admired about him was that he took time to really care about people, and not just people involved in the basketball program. He wanted to know what you were studying, how you're doing, where you're from, what's your family like. He was just a real personable guy, and just a down home Indiana boy who was a heck of a basketball coach, and did some incredible things.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, I didn't know for sure, but just my read on him through the media from afar, and that would have been my guess. He seemed like a genuine, down to earth kind of guy.
Totally. Yeah. Spot on.
So, before we move on and talk about life after college, talk about some of your experiences in college. In addition to being right there, having an awesome basketball program at Butler, I know you had the opportunity to do an internship with the Indiana Pacers, and also having internship or an experience with Fox Sports Midwest.
Yeah, man, you did your homework.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah. So it's funny you bring up that Pacers internship, because that really had nothing to do with media. I just was that was going into my senior year, and I was kind of just looking for something different, something to mix it up a little bit. And I got really fortunate to get an internship in the basketball operations side. So kind of looking at it from the outside in versus how media members typically look at it, which is outside looking in. And that was a really unique experience, because I kind of got to see how players kind of relate to the media, and you know what that process looks like internally, but then even more than that, just to see how an organization runs, and you know how players relate with coaches, how players relate with front office staff, how it works. And that year, the Pacers lost in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals to the Big Three at the Miami Heat. And Bubba, that was the first year I ever went to an NBA game, because St. Louis doesn't have an NBA team, right? So
right.
my first series ever was Knicks Pacers, which the Knicks had Carmelo Anthony, J.R. Smith, and a handful of other dudes, Amon Shumpert, I think. And then I got to see on one more series, and then the Heat series. So, in a span of 3 weeks, I had never seen an NBA team before in person. I got to see all these guys up front, and I was just blown away by how big they are in person. I don't think TV does it justice,
No,
just
definitely not.
how long they are, how athletic these guys are. I mean, to move the way they do with the size that they have, it's one reason I love the NBA, because I think they're some of the best athletes in the world.
Yeah, no doubt. And admittedly, I mean, the last several years, and probably the last 10 to 12 years, I haven't followed the NBA very closely at all. But growing up, starting in, I guess, late 80s there when the Charlotte Hornets came into existence, I believe it was 89. And,
Mhm.
those days with Alonzo Mourning, Larry Johnson, etc. A lot of fond memories of those years. A close friend of ours had season tickets for the Hornets, and so got to check them out a lot. And a lot of great memories going to those games. I was a Larry Bird fan as well, and having the opportunity to go to the Hive, as they called it back then, the old Charlotte Coliseum, which was imploded several years ago, to see the likes of Magic Johnson, Patrick Ewing, and some of those excellent teams, like the Lakers, Knicks, etc. I'll never forget. I want to say it was the Golden State Warriors that Manute Bol was playing for at the time, 7'7". Just watching him sit down and his knees coming up to his head.
Oh man, they needed to get him a booster seat
Yeah,
like Patrick Ewing has. while he's coaching with the. I don't know if you know this, but he travels with a special chair
I
that
did
was
I did not
custom
realize
built.
that. I certainly knew he was, at his alma mater there with Georgetown, but I did not realize that regarding Coach Ewing traveling.
Yeah, yeah, you got to take care of those tall guys, man.
Yeah,
They have it hard enough flying on planes and ducking under, doorways and stuff like that. So you got to take care of them when you can.
yeah. Like you're saying, I'm 6'3", and I've been in hotels. I mean, you're not staying at some cheap hotel, and I mean, I'm 6'3" and having to duck at times on certain things, like in the shower. I was like, how's a guy that's a foot or foot and a half taller than me doing it?
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
after college, and talk about your first experiences. I know you spent some time at Washington University in your hometown in St. Louis. I remember getting a ton of mail from them back in the day. I mean, out outside of the University of Kentucky, which sent a ton of mail. I got a ton of mail from the Washington University in St. Louis, just for school, not even athletics. But talk about your experience there, and then the Johnson City Cardinals, which had to be neat, being a minor league affiliate of St. Louis.
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't have a job when I graduated college. I sent my tape out to what felt like 100 different local TV stations, but didn't get a call back. So I moved back home with my parents and just tried to pick up little games here and there. And a guy by the name of Chris Mitchell at Washington University, he's still there, and he gave me my first real shot to call college games. And I got to call football and basketball and volleyball and baseball, and I loved it. It was awesome. And eventually, probably 6 or 7 months after I graduated college, I interviewed for the Johnson City Cardinals play-by-play and media relations job, and I got it, which was a dream come true. First real job, getting to work for a team that's in the organization of the team that I always grew up watching and going to games, the St. Louis Cardinals. And that was just a lot of fun. I wasn't making hardly anything, but I was living in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I was hiking when I could, going on trail runs, living in Tennessee, which was beautiful, and calling baseball games, which, man, it's definitely a summer I'll never forget. Especially that being my first summer doing minor league baseball.
Now refresh me. Is that was that short season A ball or rookie league, or what was it?
Yeah, exactly. It was rookie ball in the Appalachian League.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up the Appalachian League. Did the Appalachian League, when you were there, did it still include Pulaski?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Because
I remember taking some trips to Pulaski.
I want to say it was one of my first, if not my first, minor league baseball experience. Visiting family up in Pulaski, where my dad was from originally, and watching the Pulaski Braves play whomever. That's when I got my first foul ball. A gentleman next to us got it, and then he was nice enough to give it to me.
That's awesome. Don't you just love minor league baseball? There's something really special about it.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you're saying, having the small towns have the opportunity to have a professional franchise, kind of like where I am right now, Kannapolis, about a half an hour north of Charlotte. And
Yeah,
they used to be the Intimidators. Prior to that, it was the Boll Weevils. But with the new stadium, I think maybe there were some changes that took place, and they became the Cannonballers.
I did not know that. I remember the Kannapolis Intimidators just from applying for various jobs.
Right.
Uh, do you ever get out to minor league games still?
Occasionally, I do. I go to the ballpark a lot because it's only 6 or 7 miles from my house, and I have the opportunity. They leave it open. Um, very friendly hours, and it's tied into the greenway, and a lot of folks walk and ride bikes to the ballpark. So they've
That's
actually it was supposed to open last season, and we had no baseball because of COVID. And
right.
then I have had the opportunity to go to a college game there, and they're trying to get all the kinks worked out before the Cannonballer season starts in May. So I checked out App State and Charlotte there here a few weeks back.
App
But
State. Now you want to talk about a great town,
yes,
Boone, Carolina.
not far at all from Johnson City.
No, yeah, I tried on off weekends to get to some various parts of that country because I'd never really spent any time there before, and man, Boone is such a cool place.
Did you have a chance to attend a football game?
Unfortunately not. I was really hoping I was gonna get to stick around a little bit into the fall, but I
Right.
ended up coming back to Indianapolis and working, for the Big East, conference. But I bet football games there are a lot of fun.
Yeah, they certainly are. One of my best friends, Britt Johnson, he's an assistant baseball coach there, recruiting coordinator. But had the opportunity, and really even growing up, as you see there on the screen, East Carolina's my program and the school that I follow, very diehard pirate, but at the same time had a lot of Appalachian State friends growing up. So if I wasn't going to an East Carolina game, I spent a lot of time in Boone as well, and a lot of fond memories of Kid Brewer Stadium, and also in Winston Salem watching App State back when they were SCS defeat Wake Forest.
Did you go to ECU? How did you become such a big Pirates fan?
My dad is class of '76, and then I actually played small college football. Finished up at Averett University in Danville, Virginia, in Division III school. So I actually did not attend East Carolina, but just a lifelong fan. And then when I was doing my undergrad internship in media relations, I did that at East Carolina with Tom McClellan, who's if you ever call a basketball game at Williams Arena, Minges Coliseum, Jody Jones is the basketball SID, but you will probably at some point, if you continue doing what you're doing, come across Tom McClellan if you haven't already.
That's awesome, man. Were you a quarterback?
I was quarterback and punter, and that was something a lot of coaches like, just from the standpoint of being able to run a fake punt more easily.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I bet. I bet you had a lot of fun with the fake punt.
But you've kind of touched on it a little bit already. But you talk about working for the Big East Conference, but talk about leaving the Johnson City Cardinals after one season, and take us, give us a Cliff Notes version of your career from there. You've had the opportunity to work for ESPN, Fox Sports, and the Big Ten Network.
Yeah, it's pretty just humbling, to think about kind of the journey I've taken and all the people that have helped me along the way. And I spent 4 years in the minor leagues working for four different teams, and that was just awesome, Bubba, because I got to see different parts of the country. I went to Pensacola, Florida. I went to Louisville, Kentucky. I went to Lansing, Michigan, and Johnson City, Tennessee. And each off season, I would come back to Indianapolis and I would do work for the Big East Conference and various colleges around town, or around the Midwest, I should say. And then, a couple of years ago, I got my first shot with ESPN on a Thursday night in the Ohio Valley Conference. They needed a fill in for a men's basketball game, so I got to call that, and the rest is kind of history from there. But it's been a great. I have no complaints. I'm just very fortunate, and I feel so blessed to be working in this industry, especially this year. When heck, I didn't call a game for, gosh, I think it was 5 months between mid March all the way until September or October of 2020, with COVID. And so I just feel really fortunate that I'm back calling games, and I'm, hopeful that I get to keep calling more and more games and my schedule starts to come back to where it was pre-COVID. But, you know, getting to work with ESPN and Fox and Big Ten Network, I would say, like, yes, it's really cool, being able to work for those networks, having grown up watching them, my whole childhood. But the biggest thing is just the people, uh, and meeting so many talented and also amazing human beings. And that's just inspiring. It makes me want to work harder and be better. So I would say that to me, man, is the coolest thing, is just the people I get to meet along the way.
You talk about the experiences, and you referenced some college towns a minute ago. What are some of your top memories? Be it some of the college towns, memorable game or two you've had the opportunity to call, maybe even, things. Obviously, you're on a business trip, but if you did have a little bit of downtime on a game day, without going directly to the stadium or the arena, maybe a local mom and pop restaurant and that kind of thing that you had the opportunity to check out, something like you'd see on diners, drive-ins, and dives.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Well, one that comes to memory right off the bat is I was living in Pensacola calling minor league games. That is an unbelievable minor league stadium. But I think this place was actually on Diners, Drive-ins, and Dash, or whatever the name of that show is. Uh,
Dives.
yes, Dives. The Ruby Slipper in downtown Pensacola. Unbelievable brunch spot. Everything you want. If you're a pancake guy, they got you. If you like biscuits and gravy, phenomenal. I mean, it's down south, so you would
Yeah.
expect biscuits and gravy to be good. So I would say Pensacola is probably my favorite minor league baseball town that I've been in, that I can remember it anyway, like right off the top of my head. As far as college towns go, that's a great question. I really like Oxford, Mississippi. It's a pain to get to,
Yeah.
but once you're there, it's really cool. Their town square is super old school, and um, it's kind of got a quaint, kind of old Southern vibe to it. And of course, the food's spectacular. And I had to fly into Memphis and then get a rental car and drive there. So when I was in
Right.
Memphis, I stopped and got some barbecue for the
Yeah.
drive. Um, as far as Big Ten goes, I'm a big fan of Ann Arbor. That's a really cool town. Plus, the Big House is a site that everyone should see.
Right.
Um, so yeah, man, those are just some spots that jump out to me right off the bat.
One of my App State friends, he was actually in attendance when App State took down Michigan here
Wow.
about 15 years ago now, not quite, I guess 14 years ago, that 2007 season, because I remember exactly where I was. I'd been to watch East Carolina play up at Virginia Tech, and that game was very memorable in its own right because it was competitive, but more so because that was the first game after the mass shooting at Virginia Tech, which
Mm,
you obviously are very well aware of. But
yes.
yeah, and my App State buddy who went to that game up in Ann Arbor and just talked about, it's not exactly what you anticipate, when you go up on the outside of the stadium because of the way it sits down in the hole. And,
Yeah.
as far as a stadium that seats 110,000 people, you're going out or going up to it, and it's, I guess, kind of like the Rose Bowl or something.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like I remember driving up to it and thinking, man, it looks a lot bigger on TV. And then I realized, well, the stadium's kind of like the field is down.
Right.
So you're not really walking up tons of flights of stairs or taking an elevator to get to the top row of seats. You're looking down into this bowl, and that would be a bucket list thing for me to call a football game at um, at Michigan, because one of the big things that drew me to live sports is the fans and just the energy and the electricity and the atmosphere when it's a big game or there's a big moment in the game. So I don't know of many other places that rock quite like Ann Arbor does on a football Saturday.
And you bring up Oxford. I've actually never had the opportunity, unfortunately, to visit Oxford, attend a game in Oxford. But my parents, they had the chance here, I guess, 4 years or so ago now, to go to an East Carolina baseball series there and catch three games between the Pirates and Rebels, which was a heck of an early season series, top 10 matchup. But
Yeah,
they said the exact same things that you did, as far as it being, the stereotypical Southern town. And I saw some pictures that they sent me, and it almost looked like a mini New Orleans as far as the type of buildings.
totally. Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of that old school, sort of like French Quarter
Yeah.
architecture and town square in the middle, and everyone's walking around, and some cobblestone streets, I think, if memory serves me correctly. So yeah, another town I really like is Knoxville. it's not like your stereotypical, southern town. It's a big
Right.
college town, but I really like Knoxville a lot. And that and Rocky Top, Neyland Stadium,
Right.
that's really cool.
Yeah, I've never had the opportunity to go to a game there. I did go to an orange white spring game back several years ago, and then I also had the opportunity back when I was in middle school to attend football camp there when David Cutcliffe, of course, who coached Peyton Manning and Eli at Ole Miss, he was the offensive coordinator there at the time, and very fond memories of that. I would like to see it on a game day though. The Volunteer Navy right there on the river.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've never been to a game there either. I walked over there. I was there for a college softball series, and one night after the game, I walked over to Neyland Stadium and the gate was open. So I got to walk down the tunnel that the players walk through and onto the little edge of the field. And I was just thinking, man, I can't imagine the adrenaline for these guys on a Saturday afternoon in the SEC with 100,000 fans there, you know, hooting and hollering and jumping up and down and just the stadium shaking. I mean, it's just that's what makes college football so special, I think, is just the fans and the environment.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you're saying, playing Florida, Georgia, Alabama, whoever, and 100,000 plus fans with Rocky Top playing and them running through that too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
will be interesting to see how Josh Heupel does there. They've certainly not had a ton of success here in recent years. Here and there under Butch Jones, and it seemed as though Jeremy Pruitt might have it in the right, had it headed in the right direction, but some I guess improprieties. We'll leave it at that behind the scene there. But shifting to college basketball, you're right there. You're based in Indianapolis. I know you had the chance to attend a couple of games, including the national title game. So let's just start off in general terms uh, with the big dance all taking place in the greater Indianapolis area. Excuse me. You had such a I guess, great results because you only had that one cancellation. Unfortunately, VCU had to opt out due to COVID.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, round of applause for Indianapolis for pulling off a month long stretch and housing all these players and coaches and officials and volunteers, staff, feeding them, making sure that the city was ready to host something like this on short notice. And secondly, I think every city in the US could have used an event like that. After the year we've all had and businesses going under and or losing tons of money and just cities hurting for tourism and for big events. And so the fact that Indiana and then in particular Indianapolis was able to host it, I mean, it's really you cannot put a price on what that did for Indianapolis in terms of this COVID recovery. So really cool to see. Um, from a personal perspective, got to see a really good game between West Virginia and Syracuse. I thought for sure West Virginia was going to force overtime, but man, what a run for Syracuse! And then I went to the national title game, which was, you know, not as exciting as I was hoping it was going to be, but still really cool to be there in person and see Baylor, cap off what was an incredible and dominant season. I think I thought all along they were one of, if not the best teams in the nation, and I think they proved it by really just controlling that game against Gonzaga from the tip.
Yeah, they did that. You'd heard all season long, like you mentioned, Gonzaga and Baylor are the two best teams, and it certainly turned out that that was the case. And Gonzaga coming off that emotional win with a 40-foot banker or whatever to beat UCLA, I was interested to see how they would respond on a short turnaround. Yeah, I know you're playing for the national title. There's no doubt you're going to be motivated, but still, just the emotional toll, and not to mention that they're playing a tremendously good Baylor team with everything that Scott Drew's done there.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Just I think it's pretty underestimated. The difficulty of turning around 48 hours later. to play a game, to play the national championship game after such a dogfight, and an emotional roller coaster in the Final Four. I mean, that was a college basketball classic. My dad is 67; he'll be 68 this summer, and he texted me afterwards and said, "I think that might be the best college basketball game I've ever seen." Now, of course, we all have a tendency to be a victim of the moment. Like in a few years, maybe he'll look back on it and it may not be the best, but it's certainly up there. I mean, that had everything: lead changes, ties, big shot after big shot, block shots, emotion. It was, and a buzzer beater, to cap it off. So, especially for a Final Four game, they really treated America to a wonderful 2.5 hours.
Before we talk about some other college basketball topics very quickly, just tell folks on what it was like being there for that national title game, from an atmosphere standpoint. What was the final announced attendance? And I know obviously you have folks farther away from the court, so there were a decent number of people there. It just didn't seem like it. You would see cardboard cutouts and empty seats and that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden you'd have a roar from a crowd, not like you typically would, but it was it was better than nothing.
It was absolutely better than nothing. It was absolutely better than nothing. I don't know what the total attendance was for the national championship game. It was 25% capacity for the national championship, and I think Lucas Oil holds like 68,000.
Okay,
I think.
I was thinking 15 to 20, but I wasn't sure as far
Yeah, yeah, I would estimate that. It was funny sitting amongst the cardboard cutouts. That was the funniest thing. I would look behind me and there would be like three cutouts of random fans that got sent in and submitted to the
right.
NCAA committee, and that was funny. But um, I thought the environment was great, and surprisingly, Gonzaga fans. I was sitting real close to a big contingent, and they were loud. I mean, real loud, and that's a haul,
Yeah.
coming from Spokane. So I really enjoyed it. It was fun. I had a great seat. I was sitting behind one of the baskets. Probably, God, I don't know, 30 rows up, and even though you weren't as close to the court this year because of COVID, it was still a really cool environment, and I thought they did a great job. Just putting on the whole thing.
You talk about doing a great job. I know, unfortunately, you weren't at the semifinal game with the Zags and Bruins, but I'm sure you may have seen this on social media, as I did. Hearing several different calls. You heard the television call, radio call. You heard the Spanish call, the call from the Gonzaga network, and I had no idea. I think Adam Morrison, a Gonzaga legend, he was their color analyst, right?
I think so. I think he is their color analyst. I remember I didn't hear that call, but I think I remember seeing something earlier in the year about Adam Morrison being their color analyst, which is just awesome and probably so cool for him. He took Gonzaga on a couple really cool runs during his time there, but never a national championship game. So, but yeah, I mean, does it get any better than Jim Nance, Bill Raftery, and Grant Hill as far as a basketball broadcast team goes? I don't think so. That was a really just a fun game all the way around, and watching it on TV. Sometimes I even like watching the games on TV more than in person because I like to listen to how the play-by-play and the analysts call the game.
Right.
And yeah, that was a very memorable game, just all the way around, from the broadcast to the actual game being played.
Yeah, like you were saying, I love Raftery. When I think of Bill Raftery, a few things come to mind. One is his call of I'm trying to remember the player for Pittsburgh sending in Jerome. That
Yeah,
call when he shattered the backboard back in the '80s, the old Big East days. Remember that one? You of course think the traditional man to man when he says that following the tip off, onions. And he got onions in on this year's call.
so good.
Onions with a kiss.
Yes, love it. I mean, he is classic, classic.
And yeah, the combination of him and Jim Nance, like you're saying, is tremendous. But you know, shifting to coaching jobs, and you have 50 plus jobs around the country that have come open in college basketball. Some very big ones among those. And so very quickly, just give me a thought or two, if you would like, on each of these. And start off with the biggest ones. Right there near you, you have India, excuse me, Indiana, right down the road in Bloomington. So just
Yeah.
talk about their decision to let Archie Miller go and hire Mike Woodson.
Um, I think Mike Woodson's a really good hire. And I'm just purely speculating here, but I think Indiana may have looked at what Michigan's been able to do with Juwan Howard and the staff that he's kind of built around him there. Even though he had never been a college coach before, gosh, he got immediate buy-in, and they had results right away. And that's what Indiana's after, because I'm married into a die-hard Indiana Hoosier family, and my wife went to Indiana, her sister went to Indiana, and her brother went to Indiana. He's a senior now. And during that whole 8-year stretch, I think they went to one NCAA tournament. And for a fan base that, looks back on early 2000s, the 90s, and then, you go back into the 70s where they were the only undefeated team to win the national championship. I mean, there's a lot of rich history, and it's a really prideful fan base, and they want to win now. I think there's some fatigue as far as playing the waiting game goes, and just waiting for somebody to take 3 or 4 years to rebuild the program. So it's certainly a tough job, but I think the fact that they got Mike Woodson, somebody that played there, understands the tradition and the history, understands what it took to get to the mountaintop. Um, and plus, being an NBA guy, I think that goes a long way, especially with student athletes today. Just having somebody to look up to in that regard. So I like the hire for Indiana. One of my favorite hires, though, Bubba, is Chris Beard going to Texas,
Yes.
and then Porter Moser going to Texas Tech. I thought Indiana was going to snag Porter once they let go of Archie,
But
and clearly that's not the direction they wanted to go in. But I think he is a spectacular coach,
I think
and I'm really
Porter
excited.
actually ended up at Oklahoma, right?
I'm sorry, Oklahoma.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm really excited to see what he does at Oklahoma after the retirement of a legend.
yeah.
So he's got some big shoes to fill. But I love Chris Beard at Texas. I think that's huge. And then Porter going from Loyola Chicago to Oklahoma. He's going to get to experience a Big 12 Saturday afternoon basketball, which is awesome.
Yeah, like you're saying, as far as what Lon Kruger did at Oklahoma, you think back to, I mean, he had a nice run at UNLV, obviously Illinois, a lot of programs, Florida back in the day, and Lon Kruger got it done several places, probably in a lot of folks. I don't know. You hear his name, don't get me wrong, but when you think about some of the top college basketball coaches, you don't necessarily always hear Lon Kruger's name mentioned, but he's certainly an excellent one. And I, like you, also love the Chris Beard hire because he did just an unbelievable job at Texas Tech.
Yeah, he did. And one more that I really like, that some folks across the country are sort of critical of, is Marquette's hire of Shaka Smart. You know,
I,
he he
I agree.
he didn't win an NCAA tournament game at Texas, but I think he definitely helped get that program back to national relevance, and national competitiveness. You know, they just ran into a tough situation in the NCAA tournament. Anybody can lose on any given night, as you know. But I think he's going to do really well at Marquette. I think that really fits him. kind of that smaller school, but with a real basketball, uh, you know, pride and tradition. And, that's another place. If you've never been to Marquette on a game day in the Big East, that's a bucket list. Those students show up 5 hours before the game just to get a seat. And so I think that's a cool hire for him.
I agree with you. That's one I was going to ask you about because obviously you cover the Big East a lot, as well as your alma mater. Being in that conference, and with Shaka Smart, he was seeing what was going on there at Texas, and he saw what happened with Tom Herman on the football side of things. I think it was, him being. I think he was from Madison, Wisconsin, or he had some Wisconsin ties. It was a natural fit, and as soon as they parted ways with Wojo, that one did not surprise me.
Yeah, and I think I think a lot of people are critical because he's at a flagship school in Texas. Texas is the flagship program, and so people expected him to win there. And he was there for a while. 2015 to the end of this 2021 season, but I think I don't know. I'm not sure why I'm so optimistic about him at Marquette, but I am. I think he'll do really well there, and I think Marquette made the right choice hiring him.
Couple more that I wanted to mention. North Carolina, we haven't talked about Roy Williams, who's right around 70 years old, stepping down, and then a guy who had been on Roy's staff, Tar Heel great Hubert Davis, who actually, after his solid career in the NBA, did what you do, and as far as being a commentator and an analyst, and he opted to go home back there, I guess right around 2009 or so, to join Coach Williams' staff, and they opted to promote him rather than going after a Mark Few or someone of that nature.
I love that hire. Yeah, Hubert Davis, I thought was a really good analyst. I remember watching him on College Game Day. When I was in college and high school, and Roy, I think this is how the story goes. But Roy called him up and said, "Hey, would you leave your analyst gig to come coach?" And now years later, he's the head coach. And again, it's similar to the Indiana hire. Played there, played in the NBA, had a great career in the NBA. I mean, heck, he played for more than 10 years in the NBA. So I think that's instant respect. In addition to the fact that, he played at North Carolina, coached on the staff with a legend in Roy Williams. And I think it'll be a seamless transition at UNC.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see how that goes. I mentioned Mark Few and Wes Miller. Um, I was interested to see if they gave him a strong look. Tar Heel guard, who played for Roy Williams. What a job he's done at UNCG, and
Mhm.
kind of a natural segue there. I've heard Wes Miller's name being mentioned at Cincinnati, who parted ways with John Brandon.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see. You and I were talking about that before we started recording this. I'm interested to see what UC does there. With Mick Cronin leaving to UCLA, I think he was underappreciated. Maybe not by Cincinnati fans, but I think across the country, people didn't really look at Mick Cronin and say, "Man, what a job he did at Cincinnati." And now you look at him at UCLA, and he took that team to the Final Four as an 11 seed, coming out of nowhere. So he's a tough guy to replace, and I'll be interested to see who UC goes with. I've heard too that Archie Miller. I don't know if there's any truth to that rumor, but I've heard his name tossed around. But I think I wouldn't be surprised, for if UC went after somebody that really has no ties to the program. Um, but you look around and it's such an interesting offseason for college basketball. Like the transfer portal, all these players, changing uniforms and changing schools next year. It's going to be crazy. Uh, one name that sticks out to me is Mac McClung. He started at Georgetown, then he went to Texas Tech, and now with Beard leaving, he's back in the transfer portal. And I saw something today on Twitter that he could end up in a Tar Heel uniform. Some people were just talking about how that would be a good fit for him. So, and the coaching carousel is similar. You talked about it before. It seems like there's 50 coaching jobs that came open this year. Classic 2020, 2021 fashion, just the uncertainty of it all. But that is an interesting job because UC is a rich program and they have a very passionate fan base, great environment on game day. So I'll be interested to see who ends up getting the head coaching job there.
Yeah, like you're saying, it's a tremendous job. I think back, I guess late '80s, early '90s, all those excellent teams that Bob Huggins had there before he went on to his alma mater there at West Virginia. But Huggy Bear, back in the days of Nick Van Exel and some of those guys, Jason Maxill, just so many talented players went through that UC program.
I've even seen Van Exel's name thrown around. I was reading a Cincinnati Enquirer article the other day, and they tossed his name in the mix.
Now where's he coaching now? I knew he was in coaching, but I didn't recall where.
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I'm looking that up right now. He is at. Give me a second. He is currently with. I don't think he's with anybody right now. He was with the Memphis Grizzlies.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I think his last coaching job was in 2019 with the Memphis Grizzlies. But man, what a great hire. I think that would be a great hire, and that is somebody that had Cincinnati ties because he finished his college career there.
Okay. Yeah. It's looking like he's with maybe a scout for the Mavericks now.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So another guy went to the school, played in the NBA, coached in the NBA. That's instant credibility.
The Juwan Howard, Penny Hardaway mold, and also Woodson that we already mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Matt, we really appreciate your time. You've been very generous. Didn't intend on going this long, but one thing led to another.
I loved it, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I could talk. I get the sense that you're the same way, but I could talk sports all day long.
Definitely could. My wife doesn't always love that, but she doesn't understand it. I said, hey, you were in the band growing up, or think about something else you're passionate about. So just do your best to put yourself in my shoes. But no, appreciate your time. Would love to have you back on sometime down the road. Maybe next basketball season, if not before. And but before we let you go, go ahead and plug everything you do. Plug your social media. Plug. Do you have a podcast? Is that?
I do. Yeah, it's called the Coming Up Podcast by Matt Schumacher on Spotify and Apple or wherever you listen to your podcast. Season 1 is up. Season 2 is coming soon. You can follow me on Instagram at Matt Schumacher _. Same with Twitter. And if you're in the Indianapolis area and you need to buy a house, holler at me.
Absolutely. Again, appreciate your time, and we look forward to having you back on down the road.
Thanks, Bubba.
That concludes this edition of the Bubba Rose Show. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you listen. Also, be sure to follow us on social media at Bubba Rosenbaum on Twitter, at Bubba Rose Show on Instagram. Like and follow the Bubba Rose Show on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let us hear from you by emailing us at thebubbaroseshow@gmail.com. Again, that's thebubbaroseshow@gmail.com. We'll see you next time, y'all.